Arabella Cooper was 28 years old the day she played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major at a funeral she never should have been hired for. She stood at the edge of the sanctuary, her worn leather bag clutched against her chest, staring at the grand piano positioned near the mahogany casket. The church was silent except for the soft rustle of expensive fabric, silk, wool, cashmere, the kind of materials Arabella only saw in store windows. She wore her only black dress, the one with the mended hem she'd stitched herself 3 nights before. Her shoes were scuffed. Her fingers were cold. She didn't know that the woman in the casket was Lucia Blackwood, matriarch of the most powerful crime family in the Northeast. She didn't know that the man sitting in the front pew, shoulders rigid and face carved from stone, controlled half the city's underground economy. She didn't know that the funeral director had hired her only because the family's usual pianist had cancelled at the last moment. Something about not wanting to be associated with that family. All Arabella knew was that she needed the $500 they'd offered her, desperately. The funeral director gestured to her with a sharp nod. It was time. Arabella walked to the piano bench, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. She sat down, adjusted her posture, placed her hands over the keys, and then she began to play the song that would unravel everything. 3 days before the funeral, Arabella Cooper had $47 in her bank account and a stack of bills that required much, much more. She lived in a studio apartment above a laundromat in the old quarter of the city, where the streets smelled like detergent and diesel, and the sirens never really stopped. The apartment was small, just a bed, a hot plate, a cramped bathroom, and an old upright piano she'd bought for $200 from an estate sale 7 years ago. The piano was scratched and out of tune, but it was hers. Arabella had been teaching piano for 6 years. She charged $20 per half-hour lesson, which was less than most teachers, but it was all her students' families could afford. She taught children in the evenings after they finished school, cramming 5 or 6 lessons into her tiny apartment each night. Some paid on time, some paid late, some didn't pay at all. She never complained. She just adjusted her budget and ate less. Arabella had grown up in a similar neighborhood, raised by a single mother who cleaned office buildings at night. Her mother had saved for 3 years to buy Arabella her first keyboard when she was 8 years old. Arabella had taught herself to play by watching YouTube videos and checking out library books on music theory. By the time she was 16, she was good enough to win a scholarship to a community college music program. But her mother got sick during Arabella's 2nd year. Cancer, aggressive, expensive. Arabella dropped out to care for her. She worked 3 jobs, waiting tables, cleaning houses, and teaching piano lessons on weekends. Her mother died 8 months later, leaving Arabella with nothing but medical debt and a fierce, quiet determination to survive. That determination was the only thing keeping her afloat. On the morning she received the call about the funeral, Arabella had been sitting at her kitchen table staring at an eviction notice. She was 2 months behind on rent. Her landlord, Mr. Chen, was a patient man, but even patience had limits. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Arabella Cooper, the pianist? The voice was clipped, professional, male. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Richard Donovan. I'm a funeral director at Sacred Heart Memorial. We need a pianist for a service this Saturday. Our regular musician had to cancel. Are you available? Arabella's heart jumped. Yes, I'm available. The service is at 2 o'clock. It's a private funeral. High-profile family. We need someone discreet and professional. The payment is $500, cash immediately after the service. $500. Arabella's hand tightened around the phone. I can do that. Good. Arrive at 1:30 for sound check. Dress code is formal black. Do you have appropriate attire? Arabella looked down at the black dress hanging on the back of her door, the one she'd worn to her mother's funeral. Yes. Excellent. I'll email you the details. And Miss Cooper, this is a closed service. No photographs, no questions. You play, you leave, you get paid. Understood? Understood. The call ended. Arabella sat very still, staring at the eviction notice on her table. $500 would cover 2 months of rent. It would buy groceries. It would give her breathing room. She didn't care whose funeral it was. She just needed to play. Axel Blackwood sat in the front pew of Sacred Heart Memorial Church and felt nothing. He was 36 years old. He had killed 7 men in his lifetime, 3 by his own hand, 4 by order. He controlled a network of businesses, legitimate and otherwise, that generated millions of dollars annually. He owned politicians, judges, and police captains. He had power that most men would never understand. And none of it mattered because his mother was dead. Lucia Blackwood had been 72 years old. She had died of a heart attack in her sleep, peacefully, without pain. The doctors said it was a blessing. Axel didn't believe in blessings. He stared at the casket, polished and perfect, draped with white lilies, his mother's favorite flower. The church was filled with people, all dressed in black, all wearing the appropriate expressions of grief. Some of them were family, most were business associates, attending out of obligation or fear. Axel's younger brother, Marco, sat beside him, silent and hollow-eyed. Marco had always been closer to their mother. He was the sensitive one, the one who'd wanted to be a lawyer, not a soldier. Their mother had protected him, kept him out of the family business as much as she could. Axel had been the one groomed to lead, the eldest son, the heir. And now he was alone at the top? The funeral director approached, leaning down to whisper in Axel's ear. "Sir, we're ready to begin. The pianist is here." Axel nodded without looking up. "She's not our usual musician." The director added quietly, "I had to hire someone at the last minute, but she comes highly recommended. Very professional?" "Fine, just start." The director withdrew. Axel heard footsteps echoing across the marble floor. He didn't look up. He didn't care who was playing the piano. Music was just sound, noise to fill the silence while people pretended to mourn. He heard the piano bench scrape softly against the floor. A pause, and then the music began. The first notes fell like rain, soft, delicate, achingly beautiful. Chopin's Nocturne, in E-flat major. Axel's entire body went rigid. His head snapped up. His eyes locked onto the woman at the piano. She was small, dressed in a simple black dress that looked worn at the edges. Her dark hair was pulled back into a low bun. Her hands moved over the keys with precision and grace, coaxing out each note with a tenderness that made Axel's chest tighten. But it wasn't her appearance that shocked him. It was the song, Nocturne, in E-flat major, his mother's favorite piece, not one of Chopin's famous works, not the ones played at every recital and concert. This was a quieter piece, lesser known, intimate. His mother had played it on their old family piano when Axel was a child, late at night, when she thought no one was listening. She had played it when she was sad. She had played it when she was remembering Axel's father, who had died when Axel was 12. She had played it when the weight of their family's legacy became too heavy to bear. Axel hadn't heard that song in 20 years. He had never told anyone it was her favorite. He had never mentioned it to the funeral director. It wasn't listed anywhere in his mother's belongings. And yet this woman, this stranger, was playing it perfectly. Axel's hands clenched into fists on his lap. His jaw tightened. Around him, the congregation sat in reverent silence, listening to the music flow through the church like a ghost returning home. But Axel wasn't hearing the song the way they were. He was hearing his mother's hands on the keys. He was hearing the melody drift through the hallways of their old house, the one before the money, before the power, before everything changed. He was hearing his childhood. Beside him, Marco's breath hitched. Axel glanced over. His brother's face was pale, his eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. Marco remembered too. The song continued, each note a memory Axel had buried deep. He felt something crack inside his chest, something he'd kept locked away for decades. And then the music stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. The woman at the piano lifted her hands from the keys, folded them in her lap, and bowed her head. Axel couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Who was she? How did she know? The service continued. A priest spoke. Family members gave eulogies. Axel barely heard any of it. His eyes kept drifting back to the woman at the piano. She sat quietly, hands in her lap, eyes downcast. She didn't look at anyone, didn't draw attention to herself. She was just there. Invisible, except to him. When the service ended, the congregation stood. People approached Axel and Marco, offering condolences in low, respectful tones. Axel shook hands, nodded, said the appropriate words. But his attention was on the pianist. She was gathering her things, a worn leather bag, a folder of sheet music. She moved quickly, efficiently, like someone who wanted to leave before being noticed. Axel turned to his second-in-command, Vincent, who stood a few feet away. Vincent was a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, loyal to a fault. "That woman at the piano," Axel said quietly. "Find out who she is." Vincent followed Axel's gaze. "The pianist?" "Yes." "You want me to bring her to you?" "No, not yet. Just find out who she is, where she came from, how she knew to play that song." Vincent's expression didn't change, but Axel saw the flicker of understanding in his eyes. Understood. Vincent disappeared into the crowd. Axel watched as the pianist slipped toward the exit, moving through the mourners like a shadow. She didn't stop to speak to anyone, didn't look back. She reached the doors, pushed them open, and was gone. Axel stood very still, surrounded by people offering empty words of comfort. All he could hear was the echo of that song. Arabella left the church with $500 in cash tucked into her bag and a strange, unsettled feeling in her chest. The funeral had been odd. She couldn't quite explain it. The congregation had been too quiet, too watchful. The men in dark suits had stood at the edges of the sanctuary like sentinels, and the man in the front pew, the one who'd looked at her with such intensity, had made her skin prickle with unease. She told herself she was imagining things. Funerals were always tense. Grief made people behave strangely. She walked quickly down the stone steps of the church, clutching her bag against her side. The autumn air was cold, biting through her thin dress. She hadn't brought a coat, couldn't afford one. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Chen, her landlord. "Rent? You promised this week." Arabella exhaled slowly and typed back, "I have it. We'll drop it off tonight." The relief was immediate, overwhelming. She'd made it through another month. Arabella walked to the bus stop, counting the bills in her bag one more time to make sure they were real. 5 crisp $100 bills, more money than she'd seen in one place in years. She thought about the song she'd played, Chopin's Nocturne, in E-flat major. It hadn't been on the list the funeral director had given her. The list had included standard funeral hymns, Ave Maria, Amazing Grace, typical requests. But when Arabella had arrived early for the sound check and seen the empty church, something had pulled at her. She'd sat at the piano, running her fingers over the keys, and the nocturne had come to her unbidden. It was a piece her mother had loved. Her mother had hummed it while folding laundry, while cooking dinner, while sitting beside Arabella during her chemotherapy treatments. It was the song that had played in Arabella's mind during her mother's funeral, though she hadn't been able to play it then. Her hands had been shaking too badly. Today, she'd played it, for someone else's mother, a stranger's grief. It had felt right. Arabella didn't know why. She just knew that when she'd finished, the silence in the church had been different, heavier, sadder. She hoped the family hadn't minded. The bus arrived. Arabella climbed aboard and found a seat near the back. She pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched the city blur past. She didn't notice the black sedan following 3 cars behind. Vincent made 3 phone calls and had the pianist's full background within an hour. Her name was Arabella Cooper, 28 years old, born and raised in the city. No criminal record, no political affiliations, no connection to any rival families. She was nobody. A piano teacher living in a studio apartment above a laundromat, barely scraping by. Her mother had died 2 years ago. Medical debt. No other family. Vincent sat in the back of Axel's car, reading the information aloud from his phone. She teaches kids, mostly low-income families, charges $20 a lesson. She's behind on rent. Has been for months. The funeral director hired her because she was cheap and available. Axel sat in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. How did she know the song? There's nothing in her background that connects her to your mother, boss. No overlap. No mutual acquaintances. She didn't even know whose funeral she was playing for until she showed up. Then how? Vincent hesitated. Could be coincidence. Chopin wrote a lot of pieces. Maybe she just... It wasn't coincidence. Axel's voice was flat, final. Vincent went quiet. Axel's mind churned through possibilities. His mother had been intensely private. She hadn't shared personal things with outsiders. The nocturne had been hers, a piece she'd played in solitude, in the privacy of their home. No one knew about it except Axel and Marco. And now this woman. Where is she now? Axel asked. Went straight home. She's been there for the past 2 hours. Axel nodded slowly. Keep eyes on her. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. You think she's working for someone? I don't know what she is yet. Vincent leaned forward. You want me to bring her in? No. Axel started the car. Not yet. I'll handle this myself. 3 days passed. Arabella fell back into her routine. She taught lessons, practiced on her out-of-tune piano, paid her rent, bought groceries. She tried not to think about the funeral, but the song kept replaying in her mind, the way the church had felt, heavy and sacred and sad. The way the man in the front pew had looked at her, just for a moment, with something that felt like recognition. She told herself it didn't matter. She'd been hired to play. She'd played. She'd been paid. That was the end of it. On the 3rd night, there was a knock at her door. Arabella froze. It was late, almost 10 o'clock. Her last student had left an hour ago. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again. Firm, deliberate. Arabella walked to the door slowly, her heart pounding. She peered through the peephole. A man stood in the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit. Not someone she recognized. Who is it? She called through the door. Miss Cooper? The voice was calm, professional. My name is Vincent. I work for Axel Blackwood. He'd like to speak with you. Arabella's blood went cold. Blackwood. She'd heard that name before. Everyone in the city had. The Blackwoods were dangerous, powerful, connected, and she'd played at one of their funerals. I don't understand, Arabella said, her voice shaking. What does he want? He'd like to speak with you about the service on Saturday. It will only take a few minutes. I don't think that's a good idea. Miss Cooper. Vincent's tone didn't change, but there was steel beneath it. Mr. Blackwood is waiting downstairs in his car. He's asking politely, please don't make this difficult. Arabella's hands trembled as she unlocked the door. Vincent stood in the hallway, his expression unreadable. He gestured toward the stairs. After you. Arabella grabbed her jacket and followed him down, her mind racing. What had she done wrong? Had she offended the family somehow? Was she in danger? She stepped outside into the cold night air. A black sedan was parked at the curb, engine running. Vincent opened the back door. Arabella hesitated. It's just a conversation, Vincent said quietly. You're not in trouble. Arabella didn't believe him, but she didn't see a way out. She slid into the back seat and came face to face with Axel Blackwood. He looked different up close, older, harder, lines carved into his face that spoke of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. His eyes were dark, so dark they looked black in the dim light of the car. He wore a tailored suit, expensive and perfectly fitted. He looked like someone who was used to being obeyed. Arabella pressed herself against the far side of the seat, trying to put distance between them. Axel studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You played at my mother's funeral," he said finally. His voice was low, controlled. "Yes." "Do you know who I am?" Arabella swallowed. I know your name." "And what else do you know?" "Nothing. I needed the work. I didn't know whose funeral it was until I got there." Axel's gaze didn't waver. "The song you played, the nocturne, why did you choose it?" Arabella's heart hammered against her ribs. "It wasn't on the list, I don't know. It felt right. My mother used to love that piece. I thought it might be appropriate." "Your mother. She passed away 2 years ago." Axel's expression flickered, just for a second, something that might have been surprise or recognition. "How did she know the piece?" he asked. "She didn't play piano. She heard it once, on a recording, and she loved it. She used to hum it, all the time." Axel leaned back against his seat, his jaw tight. Arabella felt like she was being dissected, like he was searching for something hidden beneath her words. "That song," Axel said slowly, "was my mother's favorite. She played it when I was a child. She never told anyone. It wasn't in any of her records. No one knew except my brother and me." Arabella stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. "I don't understand," she whispered. I didn't know. It was a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences." The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Arabella's hands twisted in her lap. "Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?" Axel's eyes softened. "Just a fraction. No, you're not in trouble." "Then why am I here?" "Because I need to understand how you knew that song." "I told you. I didn't know. Your mother," Axel interrupted. "Where did she hear it?" "The recording." "Do you remember?" Arabella frowned, trying to think back. I'm not sure. She worked as a cleaner. She cleaned office buildings. Maybe she heard it there, on someone's radio?" Axel's expression went very still. "Office buildings," he repeated. "Yes, she worked nights. For years." "Which buildings?" "I don't know. She worked for a cleaning company. They sent her all over the city." Axel pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then looked back at Arabella. "What was your mother's name?" "Maria Cooper." Axel's fingers moved across the screen. He stared at whatever he was reading, his face unreadable. Then he closed his eyes. "Jesus," he whispered. Arabella's pulse spiked. "What? What is it?" Axel opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "Your mother cleaned my family's home," he said quietly, 20 years ago. "For almost 3 years. Arabella's breath caught. "What?" "My mother used to play piano late at night. Your mother would have heard her. Axel paused, his voice roughening. "They became friends. My mother talked about her. A woman named Maria who cleaned our house, who loved music even though she couldn't afford lessons. My mother gave her recordings, cassette tapes. She wanted to share the music she loved." Arabella felt tears prick her eyes. Her mother had never mentioned working for a wealthy family. She'd never talked about the places she cleaned, said it was easier to keep work and home separate. But she had talked about a woman who gave her tapes, an older woman with kind eyes who would leave them on the kitchen counter with little notes. "This one is beautiful. I hope you enjoy it." Arabella had never known who that woman was. "My mother played that song for yours," Axel said softly. "And your mother gave it to you." Arabella's tears spilled over. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know it was her." Axel's jaw worked. He looked away, staring out the window at the dark street. "Neither did I," he said. They sat in silence for a long time. Arabella wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind was spinning, pulling up fragmented memories of her mother humming that melody, of late nights when the nocturne had been the only sound in their tiny apartment. Her mother had carried that song with her for years, and it had come from this man's mother. "I'm sorry for your loss," Arabella said quietly. Axel looked at her, surprised. "I mean it," she added. "I didn't know your mother, but if she was kind to mine, then she was a good person?" Axel's expression softened. "She was the best person I knew. Then I'm glad I could play her favorite song." Axel studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," he said, handing it to her. Arabella took it hesitantly. "What is it?" $5,000. Arabella's eyes widened. She tried to hand it back. "I can't." "You can. And you will." Axel's tone left no room for argument. "You played a song that meant something to my mother. You didn't know what you were doing, but you honored her memory. That's worth more than $500. "But I didn't." "Take it." Arabella stared at the envelope in her hands, overwhelmed. "Thank you," she whispered. Axel nodded. Then he reached for the door handle. "Vincent will take you home." Arabella hesitated. Will I see you again?" Axel paused, his hand on the door. "I don't know," he said honestly. He stepped out of the car and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Arabella sat alone in the back seat, clutching the envelope, her heart aching with a grief she didn't fully understand. Arabella didn't hear from Axel Blackwood again. Days turned into weeks. She used the money he'd given her to pay off her debts, to buy groceries, to fix the heater in her apartment that had been broken for 2 winters. She even bought a new coat, something warm and sturdy that didn't let the wind through. But she couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way he'd looked when she'd told him about her mother, about the way his voice had cracked when he'd said, "She was the best person I knew." He was grieving. Arabella understood that grief. She carried it with her every day. She wondered if he was okay, if he had anyone to talk to, if he was surrounded by people who saw him as a boss, not a man who'd just lost his mother. She told herself it wasn't her business, that their lives had intersected for one brief, strange moment, and now they were separate again. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unfinished. 6 weeks after the funeral, Arabella was walking home from the grocery store when she saw him. Axel Blackwood stood outside her apartment building, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. He looked smaller, tired. Arabella stopped on the sidewalk, her grocery bags dangling from her hands. "Mr. Blackwood?" He turned. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, he looked almost relieved. "Arabella." It was the first time he'd used her first name. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Axel hesitated. I don't know. I was driving past and I just..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I'm sorry. This was a mistake." He turned to leave. "Wait," Arabella called. Axel stopped. Arabella walked toward him slowly, setting her grocery bags on the ground. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Axel's jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." Arabella studied him, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like he was carrying a weight too heavy to name. "My apartment is upstairs," she said quietly. "It's small, but it's warm, and I have tea, if you want to come up." Axel stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Why would you invite me up?" "Because you look like you need someone to talk to." "You don't know me." "I know grief when I see it." Axel's expression cracked, just for a second. Something raw and vulnerable flickered across his face before he locked it down again. "I can't," he said. "Okay." Arabella picked up her grocery bags and started toward the door. "Arabella." She turned back. Axel's hands were clenched into fists at his sides. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be anything other than what I am." Arabella's heart broke a little. "You don't have to be anything," she said softly. "You just have to be honest. Axel looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay. Arabella smiled. Come on. She led him upstairs to her tiny apartment, unlocking the door and flicking on the light. The space was humble. Bare walls, second-hand furniture, her piano in the corner. But it was clean and warm. Axel stepped inside, looking around with an expression Arabella couldn't quite read. Sit wherever, she said, setting the grocery bags on the counter. I'll make tea. Axel sat on the edge of her couch, stiff and uncertain. Arabella filled the kettle and put it on the hot plate, then busied herself with mugs and tea bags. How have you been? She asked, not looking at him. Busy? That's not what I asked. Axel exhaled slowly. I don't sleep much. I keep thinking about things I should have said to her, things I should have done. Arabella poured the hot water into the mugs and brought them over, handing one to Axel before sitting in the chair across from him. That's normal, she said. After my mother died, I spent months replaying every conversation we'd ever had, wondering if I'd told her I loved her enough, if she knew how much she meant to me. Axel wrapped his hands around the mug, staring down into the tea. Did she know? I think so. I hope so. My mother knew I loved her, Axel said quietly, but I don't think she knew how much I needed her, how much she kept me human. Arabella's throat tightened. She knew, she said, firmly. Mothers always know. Axel looked up at her, his eyes searching. How do you do it? He asked. How do you keep going? I don't know, Arabella admitted. Some days I don't think I'm keeping going. I'm just moving, breathing, existing. And then one day I wake up and realize I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm living again. It doesn't happen all at once, but it happens. Axel set the mug down on the coffee table and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I don't know if I can do that, he said. You can. You just need time. I don't have time. I have responsibilities. People depend on me. Then take 5 minutes, right now. Just breathe. Axel looked at her like she was insane. But then he closed his eyes. And he breathed. Arabella watched him. This powerful, dangerous man sitting in her tiny apartment, letting himself be vulnerable for just a moment. When he opened his eyes again, something had shifted. Thank you, he said. For what? For not treating me like I'm something to be afraid of. Arabella smiled. Should I be afraid of you? Most people are. I'm not most people. Axel's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. No, he said, you're not. Axel started coming by once a week. It wasn't planned. He never called ahead. He would just show up, usually late at night after Arabella's last piano lesson, and knock on her door. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in silence, drinking tea, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Arabella learned things about him, small things. He hated coffee but drank it anyway. He played chess. He read history books. He had wanted to be an architect when he was young, before his father died, and he inherited the family business. Axel learned things about her too. She loved thunderstorms. She'd never left the city. She dreamed of owning a real piano someday, a grand piano, the kind concert pianists played. They never talked about his work. Arabella didn't ask, and Axel didn't offer. It was an unspoken rule. When he was in her apartment, he wasn't Axel Blackwood, head of a crime family. He was just Axel, a man grieving his mother, a man trying to figure out how to keep going. One night, about 3 months after they'd started these visits, Axel arrived looking more exhausted than usual. Bad day? Arabella asked, handing him tea. Bad week. Want to talk about it? No? Arabella nodded. She sat down at her piano and began to play softly. Not the nocturne, but something lighter. Debussy. Axel closed his eyes and listened. When she finished, he opened his eyes and looked at her. Play it again, he said, the song from the funeral. Arabella hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She turned back to the piano and began. The nocturne filled the small apartment, each note carrying the weight of memory and loss and love. When she finished, Arabella turned to find Axel standing beside the piano, his eyes wet. "She would have loved that you played it," he said quietly. "I'm glad I did." Axel reached out and gently touched the piano keys, running his fingers over the worn ivory. "This needs tuning," he said. "I know. I can't afford it." Axel looked at her. "Let me." "No. You've already. Let me do this." Arabella saw something in his eyes, a need to give, to do something good, to make something better. "Okay," she said softly. Axel nodded. "I'll send someone tomorrow." "Thank you." They stood there, close together, the piano between them. And for the first time since his mother died, Axel felt like he could breathe. Vincent didn't like it. "Boss, you're spending too much time with her," he said one afternoon as they drove through the city. "It's not your concern," Axel replied, not looking up from his phone. "It is my concern. You're exposed. People are starting to ask questions." "What people?" "Your people. They don't understand why you're visiting some piano teacher. They think she might be something else." Axel's jaw tightened. "She's not." "Then what is she?" Axel didn't answer. Vincent sighed. "Look, I'm not saying she's bad for you. But you have enemies, Axel. And if they think she matters to you, they won't." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'll make sure." Vincent went quiet. Axel stared out the window, watching the city blur past. He knew Vincent was right. Every time he went to Arabella's apartment, he was putting her at risk. His world was dangerous. People who wanted to hurt him would use anyone close to him. But he couldn't stay away. Arabella was the only person who made him feel human, the only person who didn't want anything from him except his company. She didn't care about his power, didn't care about his money. She just cared about him. And Axel hadn't realized how much he needed that until he'd found it. It happened on a Tuesday night in December. Arabella was teaching her last lesson of the evening, a 10-year-old boy named Marcus who struggled with scales, when she heard footsteps on the stairs outside her apartment. Heavy footsteps, multiple people. Marcus's mother, waiting in the corner, looked up nervously. The door burst open. 3 men in dark clothes stormed in, guns drawn. Marcus screamed. His mother grabbed him, pulling him behind her. Arabella's heart stopped. "Where is he?" one of the men demanded, pointing his gun at Arabella. I don't know who you're talking about," Arabella stammered. "Blackwood. Where is he?" "He's not here. We know he comes here. We've been watching." Arabella's blood ran cold. He's not." The man stepped closer, pressing the gun to her temple. "Call him, now." Arabella's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She didn't have Axel's number. He'd never given it to her. He always just showed up. "I can't," she whispered. "I don't have his number." The man's expression darkened. "You're lying." "I'm not. I swear. He comes by sometimes. I don't know how to reach him." The man looked at his companions. "Search the place." They tore through her apartment, overturning furniture, ripping open drawers. Marcus's mother was crying, clutching her son. Arabella stood frozen, the gun still pressed to her head, tears streaming down her face. They found nothing. "She's telling the truth," one of the men said. The leader lowered his gun. "Then we wait." Axel felt it before Vincent said anything. They were halfway across the city when his phone buzzed. Vincent answered, listened for 10 seconds, then went pale. "Boss, Arabella's apartment. 3 armed men. They're waiting for you." Axel's world narrowed to a single point. "How long?" 5 minutes ago. Our guy on the block just called it in." Axel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Is she hurt?" "Unknown." Axel made a sharp U-turn, ignoring the honking horns around him. "Call everyone," he said, his August voice cold and deadly. "I want 20 men there in 10 minutes. Boss, if you go in, I don't care. Call them." Vincent made the calls. Axel drove faster than he'd ever driven in his life. His mind raced through scenarios. Who would be stupid enough to go after Arabella? Who knew about her? And then he realized. Everyone knew. He'd been careless. Too many visits. Too many late nights. He'd left a trail. He'd put her in danger. If she was hurt, if they'd touched her. Axel's vision went red. Arabella sat on her couch, hands zip-tied behind her back, watching Marcus and his mother huddled in the corner. The three men had been waiting for almost an hour. One of them stood by the window, watching the street. Another sat in Arabella's chair, gun resting on his lap. The third paced near the door. "He's not coming," Arabella said quietly. "He'll come," the leader said. "Men like him always come for their women?" "I'm not his woman. I'm just... Save it. We've been watching for weeks. He cares about you. That makes you valuable." Arabella's stomach churned. Outside, she heard car doors slamming. Footsteps. Voices. The man at the window tensed. "We've got company." The leader pulled Arabella to her feet, pressing his gun to her ribs. "Looks like your boyfriend showed up after all." There was a knock at the door. "Arabella?" Axel's voice, calm and controlled. "It's me. I'm coming in." "Don't," Arabella shouted. "They have guns." The door opened anyway. Axel stepped inside, hands raised, unarmed. His eyes found Arabella immediately, scanning her for injuries. When he saw the zip ties, the gun pressed to her side, something dark and dangerous flashed across his face. "Let them go," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "This is between you and me." The leader smiled. "You're right, it is. But their insurance." "Insurance for what?" "You took something from my boss. We want it back." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The shipment. The one you intercepted last month. $4 million worth of product. We want it back, or we start killing people you care about." The man pressed the gun harder into Arabella's side, starting with her. Axel's expression didn't change, but Arabella saw his hands curl into fists. "You touch her," Axel said softly, "and I will burn your organization to the ground. Every single person, every business, every family member. I will erase you from existence." The leader's smile faltered. "I'm not bluffing," Axel continued. "Let her go. Let the boy and his mother go, and we'll talk about your shipment." "How do I know you won't kill us the second we let them go?" "You don't, but you know what I'm capable of. And you know that if you hurt them, there's no negotiation, just retribution." The silence stretched. Arabella could feel the man's hand shaking slightly. "Boss," one of the other men said nervously, "maybe we should—" "Shut up," the leader snapped. "But he lowered the gun. "Fine, they go. But you stay." Axel nodded. "Agreed." The leader cut Arabella's zip ties and shoved her toward the door. "Get out, all of you." Arabella stumbled. Axel caught her arm, steadying her. Their eyes met for just a second. "Go," Axel said quietly. "I'm not leaving you," Arabella whispered. "Yes, you are." Vincent appeared in the doorway, reaching for Arabella. "Come on, let's go." Arabella wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but Vincent was already pulling her out, ushering Marcus and his mother down the stairs. Arabella looked back one last time. Axel stood in her apartment, surrounded by armed men, looking calm and unflinching. And then the door closed. Gunshots echoed through the building 10 minutes later. Arabella, sitting in the back of Vincent's car, flinched at each sound. Vincent sat beside her, silent and tense. "What's happening?" Arabella asked, her voice shaking. "The boss is handling it. He was unarmed." "He's never unarmed." More gunshots, then silence. Arabella's heart hammered against her ribs. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the building's front door opened. Axel walked out, his suit jacket torn, a cut above his eyebrow, but alive. He was alone. Vincent exhaled in relief. Axel climbed into the driver's seat, not looking at anyone. "Vincent, Clean it up. Yes, boss. Vincent got out of the car. Axel turned to Arabella. Are you hurt? No. What about you? I'm fine. There was shooting. I heard. It's handled. Arabella stared at him, at the blood on his shirt, the darkness in his eyes. Did you kill them? She whispered. Axel's jaw tightened. Yes. Arabella should have been horrified, should have been afraid, but all she felt was overwhelming relief that he was alive. Thank you, she said. Axel's expression softened. You shouldn't thank me. This is my fault. They came after you because of me. It's not your fault. It is. Axel's voice cracked. I should have stayed away. I should have known better. I put you in danger. Axel, I can't see you anymore. Arabella's heart stopped. What? I can't put you at risk. Not again. Tonight could have ended very differently. You could have been killed. That boy could have been killed. Because of me. But I wasn't. This time. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? It's better for you if I do? Arabella felt tears burning behind her eyes. You don't get to decide what's better for me. Yes, I do. Because I care about you too much to let you get hurt. I'm already hurt, Arabella shouted. You think walking away doesn't hurt? Axel flinched. I don't care about your world. Arabella continued, her voice breaking. I don't care about the danger, I just care about you. And if you leave now, you're doing exactly what those men wanted. You're letting them take something precious away from you. Axel stared at her, his expression torn. I can't lose you, he said hoarsely. Then don't push me away. Arabella, I know who you are. I know what you do. And I'm choosing to stay anyway, so don't make that choice for me. Axel closed his eyes, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. When he opened his eyes again, there were tears on his face. I don't deserve you, he whispered. You don't get to decide that either. Axel let out a shaky breath. Then he reached across the seat and took her hand. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too. I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone, how to let someone in. We'll figure it out together. Axel looked at their joined hands, then back at Arabella's face. Okay, he said finally. Together. Arabella stood in the middle of an empty warehouse, staring at the most beautiful piano she'd ever seen. A Steinway Model D grand piano, gleaming black lacquer, positioned perfectly in a shaft of afternoon sunlight. Axel stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching her reaction. You didn't, Arabella whispered. I did. Axel, this is too much. It's yours. This whole building is yours. I bought it. Had it renovated. You can teach here. As many students as you want. No more cramming lessons into your tiny apartment. Arabella turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Why? Because you deserve a space to share your gift. Because you gave me something priceless. You gave me peace. And because... Axel paused, his voice softening. Because I love you. It was the first time he'd said it. Arabella's breath caught. I love you too, she whispered. Axel pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. Play for me, he said. One more time. Arabella walked to the piano, sat down, and placed her hands on the keys, and she played the Nocturne, the song that had brought them together, the song that connected them through their mothers, through grief, through loss, the song that had become theirs. When she finished, Axel was standing behind her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. My mother would have loved you, he said softly. I wish I could have known her. She knew your mother. That's close enough. Axel smiled, a real smile, soft and genuine. They gave us this connection, this chance. Arabella covered his hand with hers. Then we won't waste it. No, Axel agreed. We won't. Outside, the city moved on, loud and dangerous and unforgiving. But inside that warehouse, surrounded by music and light, two people who had found each other through grief learned how to build something new, something beautiful, something that would last.